Ta-da, surprise! Mom's coming along with us. That's what my excited husband announced as his voice echoed through the entryway. Ignoring my cheerful husband and mother-in-law, I couldn't hide my surprise. And no wonder. Because the trip my husband mentioned Mom would be joining us on was our honeymoon. Confused about what he was saying, my husband's face turned into a pout of dissatisfaction. What's the matter? Aren't you happy? Happy was the last thing I was. He should have known that. Especially since my relationship with my mother-in-law was the worst, something I had complained about bitterly. It seemed she couldn't forgive me for stealing her precious son. Whenever she saw me, she would pile on the sarcasm as much as she could. The annoying part was, she never showed that side of herself in front of my husband. She was thoroughly playing the role of the good mother-in-law. Perhaps because of that, even when I confided in my husband about being mistreated, he hardly believed me. But still, he should have been well aware of my discomfort around his mother. Despite that, he went ahead and planned this. What was he thinking? Wait a minute. It's the day of, isn't it? There's no way we can get plane tickets or a hotel at this point. Of course, I hadn't booked anything for my mother-in-law. It was absurd to think we could get her on board without reservations, especially during peak travel season. Explaining that to him, my husband snorted as if it were obvious. Well then, give me all your tickets. I'll go with Mom. He reached out his hand as if it was the most natural thing in the world, leaving me speechless with disbelief. What on earth was he thinking? This wasn't just any trip. It was our honeymoon. Who in the world goes on their honeymoon with their mother? Well, I wouldn't want to go on any trip with this mother-in-law either. As I stood there with my mouth agape, my mother-in-law wore a triumphant look. She must have been so proud that her son chose her first. Come on, hurry up. I paid for it, so it shouldn't matter, right? He thinks just because he paid for the trip, he can do whatever he wants. That's when it hit me. Speaking of which, about the cost of this trip. My name is Grace. I'm 28 years old and work for my father's company. At the start, there were many who questioned my qualifications due to nepotism, but as I diligently worked and started producing results, I gradually began to hear people appreciating my efforts. Despite this, simply because I am the CEO's daughter, there are still those who speak ill of me behind my back, and sometimes their cruel words do hurt. The one who supported me through these challenges was my husband, Lucas. Lucas is the same age as me, and since we were assigned to the same team, we quickly became close and started confiding in each other. It didn't take long for us to begin dating. Lucas, who was adept at his job and significantly contributed to our achievements, was highly regarded by my father, who was all for our marriage when we announced it. So, you're Lucas, huh? I've heard a lot about you. I'm entrusting my daughter to you. Yes, I'll make sure she's happy. I fondly remember watching their exchange back then. At that time, my father was contemplating handing over the company and had discussed it with the other executives, leading to widespread speculation that Lucas might be the next CEO. The idea of my marriage seemed to present an opportunity for my father to consider a transition of leadership within the company. Having someone from within the family, especially someone as competent as Lucas, take over the business was probably not something my father was entirely against. I've never been one to seek the limelight, so the thought of my skilled husband taking over was nothing short of ideal for me. That's probably what everyone, including my father, was thinking. However, when we had dinner together, he often spoke about the mindset required for running a business, suggesting what might eventually come to pass. Lucas's father had already passed away, and his mother was living alone. Lucas dearly loved his mother, always ready to rush to her aid whenever she needed help, even during our dates. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for being raised single-handedly by her and would apologetically express his desire to repay her, which I would support with a smile. Seeing how much he cared for his mother made me think, what a wonderful man he is. I felt proud to be dating such a person. However, after we got married and started living together, I began to notice things that made me question. I'm going to see my mom for a bit. That sentence had become almost a catchphrase for him. And he was visiting his mother almost every week. "Is your mom feeling ill?" I would ask out of concern, but it seemed that was not the case. "Grace, you don't need to worry. Everyone needs some alone time, right?" Initially, he would reassure me with those words and a gentle pat on the head, but even that had stopped recently. One Saturday morning, as Lucas was cheerfully getting ready to leave, I asked him, "Hey, are you going to her place today?" Upon hearing this, his previously cheerful demeanor immediately changed, and he let out a heavy sigh. "Ah, why do you have to say it like that?" His words made me flinch. I realized too late that my tone might have sounded accusatory. He turned around and glared at me. "It can't be helped. She's all alone at home. You understand I'm just checking in on her because you're not comfortable, right?" His words made me step back. Yes, I was uneasy around her. It wasn't always like that. After all, she was the mother of the man I loved. I initially thought I should cherish my husband's mother just as much as he does. That was my initial intention. But it turns out, just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean the other person will feel the same towards you. My mother-in-law seemed to view me as a cat burglar who stole her son away. Ever since we met, she's been seizing every opportunity when Lucas isn't around to throw snide remarks my way. It happened for the first time when I went to greet her. Lucas had left to use the bathroom, and as soon as the sound of his footsteps faded, her demeanor changed completely. From her previously pleasant expression, she looked me up and down as if appraising me, her gaze cold and assessing. I don't care if you're some CEO's daughter or whatever, you're nothing special." Before I could even recover from the shock, she continued with her venomous words. "To think you'd have the nerve to show your face after stealing Lucas from me. I don't accept you at all. Make no mistake about it." She sneered at me, then loudly slurped her tea in a vulgar manner. Naturally, she hadn't offered any tea to me. Mom? Don't call me Mom. It's creepy." I wondered why someone I was meeting for the first time would harbor such hostility towards me. Despite my attempts to speak up, I was immediately shut down by her. As I stood there confused, I could hear Lucas returning from the bathroom. And just like that, she flipped back to her pleasant facade, offering me tea as if she had just remembered. "Oh, dear, I'm so sorry. I haven't even served you tea." She laughed lightly, and Lucas, upon returning, gave a wry smile. "What's the matter, Mom? You haven't served tea yet? Such a lovely young lady, Lucas. I can't believe I forgot to serve tea," she said, her face breaking into a kindly smile. "I'd be delighted if you felt comfortable enough to call me Mom. I felt a chill run down my spine. Ever since then, she's been consistently nasty to me whenever Lucas isn't around. It's like dealing with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Lucas seems oblivious to the malice his mother shows only to me. Whenever I couldn't bear it and tried to talk to him about it, he'd stubbornly insist that his mom could never say such things. "If it bothers you that much, you don't have to see her." He looked disappointed, not believing a word I said. I used to plead my case fervently. But eventually, I gave up trying to clear up the misunderstanding, seeing as he always took his mother's side. So, I took Lucas at his word and started avoiding visits to my in-laws. Unless it was absolutely necessary. To Lucas, it must seem like I simply detest his precious mother for no reason. "Just make sure to lock up, okay?" he said today, too, heading out to see her without looking back at me. My hand stretched out to him, grasping at the air. Lucas's back blurs through my tears. On the days we fight over his mother, Lucas doesn't come home. It feels like he's showing me that his mother is more important to him than his wife, me. If it weren't for issues with his mother, Lucas would be a great husband. When work isn't going well for me, he's quick to notice and offer support, and even though he often works late, he helps with the household chores without complaint. Thinking that at least he says I don't have to see her makes me feel slightly better, I mutter to myself while looking through travel brochures. I shake my head and decide to focus on the plan in front of me. It's the planning for our much-anticipated honeymoon. During this honeymoon, I won't have to think about his mother at all. At least, there won't be any chance of Lucas being called away by her. While considering the increase in Lucas's overtime due to his involvement in a big project, I daydream about where we could go. Maybe we should splurge a bit. As I flip through the pages, the temptation arises, but I immediately hold back. Since I've left all the planning to you, at least let me pay for it from my account, he said, refusing to listen to my protests that we should pay together, and just laughed. If it's just him paying, I shouldn't spend too much. Besides, I don't want to give his mother any more material for her snide remarks by appearing as a spendthrift CEO's daughter. With that thought, I let out a wry smile. Just when I decided to focus, I find myself thinking about his mother again. Ah, stop it. To change my mood, I put aside the brochure and start preparing dinner for Lucas, who will be home soon. And then, the morning of our honeymoon arrives. As I'm busy preparing, the doorbell rings. Coming. Being near the door, I open it without checking the intercom, only to be taken aback. Mom! There stands his mother, in flashy clothes with a large suitcase. Hearing my voice, Lucas peeks out. You're early, Mom. He greets her cheerfully, while she doesn't even glance at me, leaving me alternating looks between them in confusion. Early? What do you mean? Despite it being the day we're supposed to leave for our honeymoon, I'm puzzled by her large luggage. Is she planning to stay at our place while we're away? Confused, Lucas turns to me with a smile very much like his mother's. Tada! Surprise! Mom's coming with us on the honeymoon. What? Stunned, I let out a foolish noise as Lucas claps his hands in excitement. What on earth is he talking about? Wait a minute. What do you mean? Like I said, Mom's joining us on our honeymoon. Seeing my confusion, Lucas narrows his lips and cheerfully hugs his mother's shoulder. If we're going on a trip, I thought it'd be nice for Mom to join us. Watching her son express this happiness, my mother-in-law turns a smug look towards me. No, wait a minute. I press my temples in confusion and ask for clarification. This is our honeymoon, right? Honeymoons are supposed to be for the couple. I could understand inviting important family members, but shouldn't we at least discuss it first? Am I wrong? I can't be wrong, right? Yet, why are they looking at me as if my words are foreign? He made me question whether Lucas understands me at all. To make matters worse, as I struggle, my mother-in-law starts to hum a tune, clearly pleased by my discomfort. Why do we have to argue like this on what should be the joyful day of our honeymoon? And a surprise? What kind of surprise is this on the day of the trip? What's the big deal? I paid for it, so it should be fine, says Lucas, noticing my shock and frowning. No, it's not fine. Was his offer to pay for the trip not out of consideration for me, but to ensure I couldn't complain about his mother coming along? Wait, you can't just spring this on me all of a sudden. It's obviously not possible, I say, my disbelief growing. My sigh of frustration only makes Lucas and his mother more upset. What do you mean, not possible? Oh dear, you don't want to travel with me, she says, putting on a distressed face as if she's the victim, while Lucas adds in with a similarly troubled voice. My headache only intensifies. It's not about wanting or not wanting. Lucas, did you book a flight for your mom? What about the hotel? I inquire, and Lucas looks at me puzzled. Huh? We can just book that now. That's impossible. Do you realize how many months in advance we've made our reservations? I can't help but raise my voice at his lack of planning. Could he really have thought it would all work out, even on the day? Despite intending not to go overboard, the hotel we booked is fairly upscale. Especially now during peak travel season. There's no way flights or hotel rooms are available, I argue, and Lucas, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, extends his hand to me. Then give me all your tickets. What? I'm so taken aback I have to ask him to repeat himself, and Lucas does, more irritably. just give me your tickets if there's no room for Mom. It's an order from me, who's paying for the trip. Seeing my mother-in-law's triumphant face makes everything go dark before me. What? What does he mean? What am I being told? Since Mom went through all the trouble to prepare, I'll be going on this trip with her. We can go on another trip just you and me later, that's fine, right? Lucas's reasoning, prioritizing his mother as naturally as breathing, leaves me unable to comprehend. Or does he think that going on a separate trip with me later will smooth things over? I've said it before, but this is our honeymoon. Ours, mine and Lucas's. And now, he expects me to just hand it over to his mother, who showed up out of the blue with some surprise I know nothing about. Mom went through all the trouble to prepare? I couldn't care less. If he wants to smooth things over, he should be sending his mother home, not telling his wife to give up. Yet, here Lucas is, telling me to give up, and I'm utterly dismayed. Actually, I was going to keep quiet about this, but I pressed my aching head and let out a heavy sigh. The trip expenses? My dad is covering them. You haven't paid, and you have no right to demand my tickets. When I reveal this, Lucas's expression turns to one of confusion. That makes sense. He thought he had paid, which is why he felt so bold. Why would the CEO do such a thing? Lucas starts to sweat as I give him a cold look. The honeymoon money was a gift from him, telling us to save it for our future. He even said to keep quiet about it, probably to protect Lucas's pride. Why didn't you say anything? Lucas yells, his face turning red with the shock of the revelation. My mother-in-law, too, probably didn't expect my father to be the one paying. She starts to fidget nervously. Watching Lucas rant, I feel my affection for him cooling rapidly. I've had enough of his mother's snide remarks and his prioritizing her over everything. If it's just the two of you going, you'll need to return the money to my dad, and I'll cancel the reservations. Go on your trip with your own money. I shake off Lucas and his mother's frantic attempts to stop me, grab my packed bags, and leave the house. This is no joke. Using my father's money for such a mother-son affair? Over my dead body. Thanks to being tasked with all the preparations due to their busy schedules, I had made all the reservations under my name, so I start making cancellation calls while getting into the taxi I had called. Instead of heading to the planned airport, I give the driver my parents' address, and with confusion, he drives off. Arriving home with my luggage on what was supposed to be my honeymoon, my father is astoundingly surprised. But as I recount the story, his anger flares up like wildfire. What is that? Are they joking? The incessant calls from Lucas only fuel my father's rage. And my own too. Talking to my father solidifies my resolve. Dad, I think I want to get a divorce. After I made my declaration, my dad calmed his anger and gently supported me. Without saying whether it was good or bad, he soothingly rubbed my back, providing warmth. I'm sorry, Dad. I blurted out, tears accompanying my words. I could see Dad's other hand, not around my back, clenched tightly in response. The next day, Lucas came to my parents' house with a box of confectionery, intending to apologize. I wanted to refuse him entry, but my dad stopped me. If we're considering divorce, a discussion is necessary. I want to hear his true intentions directly. Let him in for now. I had thought about consulting a lawyer, but since Dad suggested otherwise, I relented. Upon opening the door, Lucas, noticing my dad, quickly apologized. Seeing Lucas act meekly in front of my dad irritated me. As Lucas continued to show his remorse, Dad prompted me to lead him to the parlor. I deeply apologize for causing such a disturbance. Lucas apologized again. Accustomed to apologies through work, his flawless posture was almost sickening. What is this apology even for? Dad sighed, seemingly for the umpteenth time. I felt the same. Lucas said he was sorry for causing a disturbance. A disturbance, that's all. Not once did he apologize for what he said to me. This is beyond insulting. Cutting off Lucas's attempt to say something else, I presented a piece of paper. The divorce papers. Do you know how to fill them out? I've already done mine, for your reference. I conveyed this deliberately politely, shocking Lucas, who hadn't expected divorce papers to come into play, his face turning ashen. Wait, Grace, please! Divorce, you can't be serious! For the first time since arriving, Lucas seemed to genuinely look at me. To him, I was always secondary. It shouldn't matter to you, right, Lucas? You have your mother, after all. If that's his stance, I'll treat him as a business acquaintance, speaking to him with due courtesy. I have no intention of repairing this relationship. That sentiment needed to be clearly communicated. What are you talking about? Why bring up my mother now? She was looking forward to the trip too. We could always go on a trip, you and I, right? Astonishing. Lucas has not grasped why I was so angry and left. We could always go? What are you talking about? It was supposed to be our honeymoon. My body shakes uncontrollably, and I gently press my right hand against it to steady myself. My lips, pressed tightly together, hurt. What kind of husband tries to take his mother on a honeymoon planned by his wife? Expressing it out loud only makes me feel more pathetic. Yet, Lucas, as if to rub salt in the wound, insists further. But, that's why I initially tried to take her with us. You're the one who said there were no flights for Mom, or that hotels couldn't be booked, right, Grace? Think about it logically. There's no way we could book anything on the day itself. I can't believe it. He is serious. Amidst my confusion, anger surfaces as he genuinely yells that I am the one at fault. And you're telling me to send my mom back when she was looking forward to it so much? Lucas's near-aggressive outburst is quietly halted by my dad. That's enough. Stop it. My dad, who had been silently listening, shakes his head in dismay. Lucas, I'm disappointed in you. Suddenly regaining his composure at those words, Lucas straightens up quickly. My dad looks at him with a sad gaze. Why did you prioritize your mother over Grace in that situation? No, well... Pressed by my dad, Lucas starts sweating. He might be able to argue back at me, but he can't do the same with my dad. A honeymoon is for the couple to go on. You could have gone on any trip with your mother later. Was everything you said about cherishing my daughter a lie? It's not a lie. I just wanted to cherish my mother as well. Lucas's spontaneous outcry is met with my dad's first glare. So, you're fine with Grace getting hurt? Lucas falls silent, visibly straining. I'm so sorry. He was mumbling an apology in a trembling voice. But his clenched fist seemed to scream of humiliation. He's apologizing because he has to. Not because he wants to. He probably doesn't think he's done anything wrong. He's just apologizing because my dad, the CEO, is angry, that's all. Lucas, you're a capable worker. My dad says, making Lucas feel relieved, thinking perhaps he's forgiven, but he quickly realizes his mistake. A gaze colder than a midwinter lake pierces Lucas. But no matter how good you are at your job, I can't trust someone who doesn't value his family. My dad hands him a pen, causing Lucas to tremble. Wait, please. Not divorce. I'll change, I promise. Lucas refuses to take the pen, so my dad forces it into his hand. You shouldn't be apologizing to me. Now Lucas starts clinging to me. Grace, please say something. I'm begging you. Please don't divorce me. Lucas pleads, coming to my feet and looking up at me as he clings to my legs, trying to escape from my dad's judgment. I'll prioritize you from now on. I'm beyond tears now. His words are laced with disrespect towards me. Please! If we get divorced, I won't be able to pay off my debts. Seeing that neither my dad nor I are nodding in agreement, Lucas blurts out in desperation. Debt? What's that? As I look down at his disheveled head, repeating the word I've heard for the first time, Lucas jumps back in surprise. He clearly had let it slip accidentally. He covers his mouth as if he said too much. Well, that... My dad and I demand the whole story with just a look, and Lucas finally begins to speak, resigned. The truth he hesitantly shares is enough to make both my dad and me hold our heads in our hands. It turns out Lucas and his mother had been living extravagantly, believing that the CEO position and its perks were guaranteed to fall into their lap. The reason Lucas had been going back to his mother's house every week was to squander money together. There's even less reason to keep you married now, my dad says with utter disdain, Lucas finally showing a genuine gesture of apology. Please wait. If we get divorced, I don't know what I'll do tomorrow. His repeated apologies are almost comical, like a toy I've seen somewhere before. This has nothing to do with us, I say with a dry gaze, waiting for Lucas to sign the divorce papers. There's nothing more to say, so my dad and I quietly sip our coffee. Of course, without offering any to Lucas. Though the divorce papers were somewhat forced, the divorce was finalized smoothly. The lawyer my dad hired was extremely competent, and with the detailed diary I kept, negotiations proceeded smoothly. We even claimed additional compensation for the honeymoon trip I had to cancel, and though there was an attempt to negotiate the amount down through the lawyers, my dad dismissed it before I could respond, making me laugh when he told me about it. As for Lucas, he quit his job almost immediately after the divorce became known at his company, leaving hastily. With no significant severance pay and only a small amount of savings, he managed to pay the alimony and debt repayment, leading to a much more modest lifestyle, I was informed by the lawyer. And his mother, now bedridden, has been living off part-time jobs, reaching out to former colleagues asking for money. While it's unclear how much of this is true, it's become a humorous story at gatherings. As for me, encouraged by my dad and other employees, it looks like I'll be taking over as the next CEO. Though I've resisted, not wanting to be at the forefront, my dad convinced me, showing a rare moment of vulnerability by not wanting to leave the company in unreliable hands. Feeling responsible for causing my father such distress, I was initially reluctant. However, it seems I might have inherited his talent for management after all. With his support as chairman, our company's performance has been on the rise, even if only slightly. Thanks to gaining some confidence, I've been getting more attention at gatherings with other CEOs. I'm not thinking about new romance just yet, but maybe it's time to take the next step forward.